Hey everyone, this is Denise Brown, and welcome to our Big Ideas. We're going to share two ideas today that we think will improve the personal caregiving experience. Laura's going to go first, I'm going to go second, and then we're going to have a facilitated conversation about our ideas. So, those of you who are joining live, we'd love to hear what you think. Okay, so Laura's going to kick us off, and she's going to share a big idea that supports dementia care partners. Okay, Laura, when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Denise. So, mood and behavior changes, that's just part of dementia, right? But what if you could improve your person's mood and behavior? How would that change their quality of life? How would it affect yours? Behavior changes are present in up to 90% of people with dementia, and they can be profoundly detrimental to their quality of life and to that of their care partners. Hundreds of studies have found that behavior challenges are among the strongest predictors of caregiver burden, and many dementia family caregivers suffer from extreme emotional and physical exhaustion, being called burnout syndrome. We're most at risk for burnout when we're not getting what we need. Social isolation, poor health, lack of fulfillment, these are strong predictors of burnout. I've experienced burnout myself, and I didn't like what it did to me as a mom. Feeling lonely and isolated increased my anxiety. And worrying about everything I needed to do, I would skip sleep, I'd skip my meals, I'd skip exercise. Feeling stressed and overwhelmed, I'd snap at my kids and start behaving in ways that made me feel awful. My therapist said I had too much on my plate and I needed to take better care of myself. Well, I've been making a conscious effort to better meet my needs, and as I've taken better care of myself, my mood and behavior have improved. It's not really groundbreaking. Most of us know that when we better meet our needs, we feel better and function better. But what if we applied this same principle to people with dementia? Well, I started doing this about 20 years ago as a caregiver in memory care. We had a resident at that time named Margaret who had severe mood swings. Sometimes she was sweet and cooperative, and other times she was less so. She would start by asking for her mother and would get really anxious, start pacing around, getting more and more tense and crabby when she couldn't find her. Her face would get flushed and she'd start to disagree angrily with anything that anyone said. She would become completely oppositional. She'd start to lash out with really hurtful comments. Oh, you're such an idiot. Just shut up. Just leave me alone. Get me out of here. I felt really bad for Margaret. And I felt really bad for her husband, too. He was so distressed by her behavior. And we tried to reassure him. We knew that this behavior wasn't Margaret, it was just the dementia. The doctor, too, tried to reassure him. There's nothing that could be done. He just has to accept the changes. So he did his best. And one afternoon, Margaret was pacing. She was angry. She was red-faced, looking for mother. And she fell and she landed on her knee. And it was so badly swollen and bruised, black and purple and blue. It honestly, it hurt just to look at it. And so doctor prescribed medication for complaints of pain. But Margaret didn't complain of pain, like ever. And if we asked her if she was hurting, she would say no in this tense, crabby voice. But we could see her nonverbal signs of pain. We could see her limping and grimacing or wincing when she tried to bear weight. There was no way she wasn't hurting. So we got permission to go ahead and give her the medication when we saw these signs of pain. And guess what? It made a huge difference. She was sweet. She was happy again. She was cooperative. She wasn't sedated. In fact, she was more alert and more functional than we'd ever seen her in the years she'd been with us. We were astounded at how well she did when her pain was controlled. And her husband, of course, was ecstatic to see the warm side of his wife again. And he said something then that really made something click. He said that Margaret had had chronic back pain her entire life, but she hadn't mentioned it in years. And that's when I realized, Margaret's chronic pain hadn't gone away, but her ability to articulate it had. Once we learned to recognize Margaret's behavioral signs of pain, looking for mother, the anxious pacing, the tense, crabby voice, and hurtful comments, now, now we could identify it and treat her pain earlier and earlier. Her mood, her behavior, her quality of life, everything improved like 1,000,000%. She was able to think more clearly. She could function more independently. She still had dementia. She was still confused and forgetful, but that oppositionalism, the cranky voice, the hurtful comments, those were gone. Those were not just the dementia. Those were the only way that Margaret had to tell us that something was wrong. Every "you're such an idiot," every "where's my mother," Margaret was telling us that she was in pain. She was using the only language that she could, her behavior. She was sending a message, but we weren't receiving it. We were able to translate her body language when she was hurting, but we didn't even try to translate her behavior. We didn't know we could. So we dismissed her behavior as just the dementia and left her trapped in a painful body for years. Margaret taught me an important lesson, something I've used to help hundreds or thousands of people with dementia over the last 20 years. Like Miko, whose only sign of urinary tract infection was to start rhyming. Translating this behavior saved her from countless hospitalizations by allowing us to identify the infection early enough to treat it at home. Or Esther, who would run into other residents with her walker. Her aggressive behavior almost got her heavily medicated, but translating the behavior uncovered the truth. She was worried about missing an activity. She couldn't even see the others until she collided into them. Escorting her to activities first in line helped alleviate her behavior and her anxiety. Society is missing the mark when it comes to responding to distressing behavior in people with dementia. We're told to accept the changes as an inevitable part of a tragic disease. And then if the behavior becomes too much to handle, medication is often ordered to control the symptoms. However, medication used for behaviors is often ineffective, often sedating the person and contributing to their decline, not helping them feel better or function better. Many distressing behaviors are not due to dementia itself. They're due to unmet core human needs. We humans, we need a lot. In addition to our physical needs, we have a vast array of emotional, mental, social, and spiritual needs. And when these needs go unmet, we struggle. Dementia doesn't erase our human needs, but it does make it harder to recognize them or address them independently or communicate them to others. 99% of people with dementia have unmet needs. And when we accept their behavior as inevitable, we don't ask the critical question, what do they need? I've seen in hundreds of people with dementia, when their needs are fulfilled, their mood and behavior changes drastically, from anger to appreciation, from anxiety to peace. Just like me, when my needs weren't met, I would yell at my kids. If I had dementia, I'd be labeled verbally aggressive. But more sleep, more social support, reducing my stress helped me stop snapping so much and start smiling more. Meet the need, alleviate the behavior. It sounds simple. In fact, it's only tricky because it can be hard to know what the need is. But our people are giving us clues. They're sending messages with their behavior, and we can learn to understand them. I've developed a system to help caregivers translate behavioral communication, provide tools to help identify the unmet need, and to spot patterns and other critical clues, even lead translation sessions in your own care team. The ABC Dementia method of behavior translation provides a systematic approach to decipher the message and behavior and to uncover exactly what our people need to feel better, function better, and yes, behave better. When we do this, it improves the quality of life of the people we support and ourselves. So please go to the ABC Dementia website at abcdementia.org and spend just 1 hour completing the behavior translation course. It's free for members of the ABC Dementia community, or you can use code ABC Gift for a free month's membership and access to the course. Because I want the world to know our people with dementia can do so much better than we think they can when enough of their needs are met. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. That's our first idea. Laura's going to share her offer to you in the chat room. So if you want to take her up, you can click the link. Okay, so here we go. So here's my idea, our second idea. And I just want to mention, if something is pressing, if you have like this pressing question that you want to ask Laura during our facilitated conversation, go ahead and put it in the chat room. You're welcome to do that. Okay, so we're talking about distress today. I am lucky enough to regularly present a program to hospital discharge planners. And the program is how to manage difficult family dynamics. And when I start the presentation, I ask the discharge planners, what percentage of family members you're currently working with have a dysfunctional situation that's causing conflict, that's impeding a decision? And they say like 70%. That was one that said to me last week, 70% of the families she's working on for a discharge of their family member are in conflict. And then she shared that it's raised, that the number is higher than it's ever been before. And she shared a story that one patient she was working with, her family could not decide about hospice services for her. So it ended up that the patient died in the hospital without hospice services. Okay, that's game over, right? That is heartbreaking. We don't want anyone to experience that. We want our family members, our carees to receive the right care at the right time. And a hospital discharge planner is trying to figure that out. And the distressed family conflict make that difficult. It's an estrangement that is brought to the hospital, moved into a little room, and makes conflict too big. And then it takes away from the true purpose, which is solving the care plan problem. What's next for mom? So the estrangement could exist in the world outside the hospital, and then you put everybody in this little room in the hospital and fireworks. So I'm going to throw out a solution. And I wish I had lots of stats that showed that this works like Laura does, but I just have been thinking about it and I thought, well, what about this? So I'm sharing a possibility. So what if, rather than everybody staying in this one room arguing, there was an intervention that pulled separate family members out to have a listening session with them? And the goals of the intervention would be each family member feels heard and understood. Because they feel heard about the conflict, it minimizes their stress and helps them focus in on what's the reason we're here today. Let's focus on that. And then it helps with timely decisions about care. We don't want another situation where someone who can benefit from hospice services does not receive them and dies in the hospital. So I'm calling this a listening solution that's led by professional listening artists. Professional listening artists actually are part of a new training program that I've developed. So here's how it could look. Each individual family member is pulled into their separate room with a listening artist. And the listening artist just says, tell me what's challenging you today. And if they start to say, well, you know what? In the worst Christmas we ever had in 1979, it all started. And instead of listening to 30 plus years of chaos, the professional listening artist pivots them to talk about today. And it's this I totally get that the pain of all these 30 years has really built up for you. I want to focus on today. And then with that pivot, the individual shares their side of the story. And the listening artist isn't there to change their side of the story, just there to accept something painful has happened. And then once the story is told and the listening artist receives that, that listening artist then says, given the current circumstances, how would you feel about taking a break from the rift for just right now? And then hopefully there's consent. And then it's okay, what are the ground rules so that this temporary break is helpful for all? And the ground rules could be we focus on the decision, we focus on what's best for your caree, we focus on the fact that this is a temporary shift in your relationship. You are welcome to go back to the rift and not talking after we make the decision. And let's just think about your goal is during this meeting and conversation is also to listen. And then when you feel yourself reacting rather than responding, what could help so you can focus on what's important? And so the family member and the listening artist then create a few strategies to stay calm. I thought of this because after the presentation last week to discharge planners, someone came up to me afterwards and said, I know that my mom's husband triggers me and I just don't know what to do because as soon as he starts, I just jump in and say, you're lying, and that's it. So we want to think through what are the triggers and then how do we manage them? So rather than saying triggers, I just said, what can help you when you want to react rather than respond? And then after everyone's had a chance to meet with their own listening artist, everybody gets back into the room. And the discharge planner or social worker starts the conversation again and clarifies what's the decision we want to make today. And the decision could be, does mom start hospice services? And then it's which option ensures your carrier receives what he or she needs. No hospice, hospice. And then whatever the decision, the family makes it, fingers crossed. And then the discharge planner says, okay, everybody, we've got the decision. Thanks to everyone. The goal is that the caree's needs are met, so services are started. The family has a better experience working together, even just once. If that's the only time, that's a success. The discharge planner has a better work experience. But there's just not enough time for a discharge planner to manage this conflict, and there aren't enough discharge planners to manage the conflict. So what if there's this team that comes in with the sole focus of hearing each person's side of the story so they get it out so they can focus on what really are we here about? And think about how the system can save money rather than having a caree in a hospital for more than what's required. The professional listening artist provide these services so that then the patient is transferred to a better setting, receives the services and care that he or she needs. And then afterwards, the discharge planner can refer the primary family caregiver to a resource, and that is conflict resolution. So our certified caregiving consultants receive training about how to help that family caregiver manage disputes. We don't put ourselves in managing the dispute. We just help family caregivers figure out strategies and plans because we know typically it's just not one and done with disputes. It could be that this is one dispute and everybody got together and it was okay, and then something else happens and it just reignites the dispute. So we want to help that family caregiver be prepared when something else comes up. In addition, we can provide any family member who wants this a recovery plan. When a family system gets together to create a decision, it's very exhausting. It's very stressful. So this tool helps them take care of themselves. So they go home and say, wow, that was a lot. I need to recover with a little bit of a walk because I need fresh air, because I want to recover to feeling at peace about this decision. In essence, what we're looking to do is create strategies for individual family members to use when they get together with their family system so that they are bringing their best behavior, and an opportunity then to recover, because it takes a lot of energy sometimes to bring in our best behavior, so that the strategies to cope continue. Again, it's not just one and done. So if you'd like to experience what having a dedicated listener could do for you, think about joining us on Thursday, October 10th. You can select a 30-minute slot to tell us a story that weighs heavy on you, that you think, I don't want to carry this anymore, I want to let it go, but I don't want to tell my spouse, I don't want to tell my coworkers, I want to tell someone I don't know. That's what our Caregiving Listener Project is all about. And I'll share a link before we close today too. Okay, so those were our two ideas, and we'd love to hear what you think. So here is how our conversation is going to go. You are welcome to share questions in the chat room if you'd like to receive more information, or if you're wondering about a system or a process. If you feel comfortable and you'd like to actually join the conversation, you can raise your hand through Zoom with one of the little reactions. Go ahead and raise your hand. And when it's your turn, go ahead and get to the bottom line. And you can use one of these three prompts. My question is, my concern is, I wonder if. Okay, so those are the three prompts for you. My question is, my concern is, I wonder if. Okay. So what did you guys think? Let's start with Laura's idea first. I'm curious how many of you could really relate to the idea that when we have unmet needs, it's just a way of showing up in the world at our worst. And I see some head shaking. Absolutely. And I wonder, Laura, if you could just guess, what do you think one of the top unmet needs are for persons living with dementia?
Yeah, there's there are a lot. Kind of the top three, I would say that pain is huge. It's very, very, very under-recognized and under-managed. Um, Grief is another one that people don't realize. Um, when the way that we cope with life-changing loss is to grieve. And when you think about what the symptoms of grief are, it's fatigue, it's irritability, it can be sensitivity to noise, it could be even some physical symptoms. Anyway, there's a lot of correlation with what we think of as symptoms of dementia, and a lot of times it's just really feeling the loss of our independence, of our living situation, all these different things, facing our mortality. And then the other one I would throw up there is just like a need for rest, cognitive rest. People we really don't understand how exhausting it is to have dementia, most of us. It takes physical energy to process every noise, every bit of information we have to determine. Our brains go through and determine, is this danger? Is this dangerous? Is this meaningful? Or is this important? What does it mean? So there's a lot of processing that goes on with every little bit of information. And so they're constantly, the brains are constantly being overloaded. And so they just need cognitive rest in a lot of cases.
And isn't that so true of all of us that we experience pain, grief, and exhaustion, and sometimes we're at a loss for words for what that is because it's just too overwhelming. Okay, so we have a question in the chat room for Valerie, for you, Laura. So I'll go ahead and read the question. And thanks, Valerie, for posting your question. What is the best way to determine what medical issue is going on? You mentioned one person had a UTI. How was that discovered? I completely agree that medical issues could be going on without the person being able to express their discomfort. I just wonder what is the best way to figure out what is going on?
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, in order to figure out what medical issue is going on, it's a little bit of a process of trial and error, and it's really, really helpful to to take notes and because it's usually going to take more time the first time versus later on you kind of know like, okay, this is how this medical issue presents in this person. So but if you're looking at that first initial time, it can take a while. It can definitely take some trial and error. And what I would recommend is, having 3 or 4 people who really, really know the person very well. Ideally, someone who knows their life story, their life history, as well as people who are really, at least one person who is really familiar with dementia, the way that behavior can present in dementia, and then at least 1 or 2 people who are really familiar with the person's routine. So that's going to be ideal. And you're going to look for changes, when did this change start? And so as much as possible, you're going to either find patterns, you're going to find when was that point of change. You're going to look for these different clues. There are some different tools that can help. There's like a screening tool that can help determine is, okay, maybe this is pain, or there's one that can determine if it's depression, or there's one for anxiety. There are some different tools, but essentially it really is a little bit of trial and error. Like for UTIs, they don't present in people with dementia the way they present in people without dementia usually, but there are some common grounds. It is common to see behavior changes and such with UTI. In that case, the way that we determined it was we noticed that she started rhyming, and there was no other changes. She didn't seem in distress. We didn't see any of the other changes you normally see with a UTI in someone with dementia, but she had this rhyming behavior, and it was just kind of weird. But fine, it wasn't an issue. Well, we kind of noted it, and then a couple of days later, she was unresponsive and had to be hospitalized. And so next time, and then that happened again. And as we're just like, how are we missing this? We know what UTIs look like. How are we missing the signs of UTI in this person? And so we took a team of like, let's figure this out. And we looked at all the patterns and we're like, gosh, wasn't she rhyming last time she was hospitalized? And um, so then the next time she started rhyming, we're like, all right, well, let's check this out. And so we took one of the test strips to test her urine, and we're able to see, yeah, there's signs of infection. So we sent it down to the lab to be analyzed. And so yeah, it can take some trial and error, but it's so awesome when it works. So did that answer your question, Valerie?
Okay, so we have another question. So Ken has a question, and this is related to staffing shortages. And so he's wondering, I have found that in many settings, there are not enough staff available, or there is a lack of training for the staff related to the dementia residents' behavior, related to needs not being met. So how do we
Yes.
manage when there's staffing shortages?
Yeah, that is absolutely, I see that as well. And it is a big issue for sure. I don't believe that the way our systems are set up are sustainable, that it is not possible to deliver high quality care for profit by the numbers. Like I think that smaller, I really like the foster home, the adult foster home or group home model where you've got maybe 6 to 10 residents, you've got a handful of staff who know the people and who care about the people. And I don't see how it can be done otherwise. So I do see that we I predict that we will be seeing some major changes in our long-term care uh, settings, and that it will be kind of an uncomfortable process to the point where it becomes that really obvious that, essentially that we're not going to stand for this anymore, and we're going to demand different. Um, but it's tricky. It is.
Something that I think is important to note too is that if we are empowering the care partners to really track behavior as a signal that there's an unmet need, they can then track unmet need solution. And then it makes it that much easier for someone to step in and provide a break for that dementia care partner. Instead of that dementia care partner feeling like, oh my gosh, no one is going to be able to figure this out because some of the behaviors are just difficult in the morning. Instead, it's not a difficult behavior. It's here's the unmet need, here's what you do. And I think it's interesting. So, Ken, you made me think about this. I think it makes it easier then for that primary family caregiver to train others in the family, as well as others who come into the home to feel just as confident providing care. It's not so intimidating by, I don't know what to do. It's now, oh, I look at the map. There's a map that matches the triggers with what the solution is. I just look at the map and then we're okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have one more question from Crystal, and her question is, I work in a dialysis setting. I see patients who appear to have signs of dementia. My question is, how do we inform the patient's family to have their loved one checked out?
Um, well, I feel, had my share of difficult conversations for sure. And um, to me, it seems like it works best if you've got to kind of find a quiet space if you can, but just really kind of getting um, to the point of it. One of the things that I think is I'm really heartened to see happening is that there is a lot of really meaningful change when it comes to the diagnosis at this point, whereas 5, 10 years ago, we really, society, everyone really tried to, we're going to ignore this until we absolutely can't, because there is no good news. There is everything you look at, it's all about how exhausting it is and how difficult it is, and just buckle up and hold on and pray it's not too, that is over before too long. And that's really, really starting to change now. There's a lot of people who have been diagnosed with dementia, 5, 10 years ago, who are out there advocating just, hey, I'm alive, I'm here, I'm contributing, and we're starting to recognize, um, so when people do have the proper support, they are able to function much, much better. And so it still is just a fraction of, you know, what you'll see out there. And a lot of times people won't um, necessarily be aware of that. But if you can help, focus on, at least have that in your heart as you're talking to them, that having the diagnosis really can make an actionable difference to the person's life, understanding what it is that you're working with is the key to figuring out what the solution is to help them feel better, to think better, function better, and um, I also just I know that when kidney function isn't kidneys aren't functioning well, then you do see a lot more cognitive impairment as well. So I'm sure that kind of clouds the picture a little bit. But I would suggest just, really heartfelt, but also coming from a place of this this matters because there's conditions that are reversible that can be uncovered through the diagnostic process for one. But even if not, then it gives the person and the family that information and that knowledge, which is really, really powerful to knowing how to set up a sustainable plan to meet everybody's needs over the long term. So I don't know if that answers your question, Crystal.
Yeah, that's a great question, Crystal, because I do think sometimes we wonder, am I stepping into something I shouldn't step into? And I think it's really helpful if you document what you've seen that makes you think, huh, I wonder what could be going on. And then I think privately sharing with the family, a couple things happened today I wanted to bring to your awareness. And it could be that there's other medical issues going on. I wanted you to be aware, and here's a referral to a neurologist who can be a good resource for you. Here's the card so you can make an appointment for follow-up. One of the things that I tested with a group of nursing students this summer was a storytelling concept to help deliver news. And I'll do that presentation for you guys in the coming months. It's been approved for CEUs because I really was thinking about a simple process we can use to deliver news. And I think oftentimes we beat around the bush or we keep our fingers crossed that, oh, the family will figure this out on their own. And I think it's helpful to be honest with the family, and we can do it in such a way that they hear the news and then they receive our support. I did annual surveys of family caregivers for probably about 25 years. And one of the questions I asked in every survey is, what do you want healthcare professionals to know? And the first one was, listen to us. And the second one was, tell us the truth. Just tell us the truth. And I also believe if we hear the truth, then we are able to take steps for ourselves and for our caree. Without the truth, we are stuck. The truth allows us to move forward.
Just to add one more thing to that too, I mean, I think that, I know the doctors, the primary care physicians are, most of them are uncomfortable having that conversation or bringing it up with their patients as well. So it's really important, I think for all of us, when we feel like we can to do that, because it really can change somebody's life, and it's not that the next person's just going to do it. So
Right, because I always think we think, oh, someone else will do it. And the doctor will do it. And that isn't a given. And it's important that if you have concerns, document them, share them honestly with the family. This is what I saw. This is why I wanted to mention it to you. I think it is important to have a referral so that they're not going home and thinking, now what do we do? We got this information, but we don't know where to go with it. Have a referral ready for a couple neurologist or a member care clinic that's in the community so they can go to the next step, which is making the appointment. Or if you feel more comfortable, you could say, I think it would be helpful to have another appointment with his general practitioner within the next couple weeks. I always worry about general practitioners because they might not make that referral to a neurologist, depending on the general practitioner. There's tons of great ones. Just always like to kind of, if we can, just go right to the source. Now, if your insurance does require a referral from the general practitioner, then you'd want to let them know that as well.
and one of the things that we do in the ABC Dementia community is sort of support people through, that process as well as the entire process of caregiving for someone with dementia. So that is a resource if just to have them go to abcdementia.org and get in touch with me, and I can kind of help have that conversation to help them figure out, all right, where do you live and what are the resources in your area and that type of thing. So
I wonder if, oh, I think we have a question from Carol. Carol has raised her hand. You can you can unmute. Thanks for being here, Carol. Go for
Oh,
it.
sure. Thank you for doing this. Laura and Patty have helped me so much with my aunt, and I have another aunt. It's my mom's little sister she's probably in moderate um, Alzheimer's at this stage. She's losing the ability to verbalize somewhat. She can respond, but she's not coming up with, she can't carry on a conversation. But I was just wondering, because my mom yesterday got a very sweet card in the mail from her with the help of her daughter. And my mom was just shocked and amazed that it was my aunt's writing. And she wrote this sweet little card. And my cousin said she helped her come up with ideas of what to say. But I wondered if when you start to see signs of behavior that you're trying to interpret, if maybe words or even pictures would help to interpret, because would people respond by saying, like if you had a sad face, are you feeling this, or are you feeling this, or even just words on cards with emotions or sensations they might be feeling, would that help to interpret?
Absolutely. I mean, it depends on what the core unmet need is. So if the issue is that their blood sugar is really elevated and they feel, that might not be effective. But if the issue is that they're having emotions that they're having difficulty processing, naming emotions is shown to be really, really helpful in just helping to process them. And so I know we were talking about this with Josephine Tite, who's an emotional wellness consultant for people with dementia. And she was saying, pretty much exactly that, like having um, it sometimes the words, sometimes it could be the color or a picture of a face or whatnot, but like helping to just like, are you feeling sad? And you can kind of guess by looking at their expression and sort of just getting a sense for their energy, it's like, oh, well, you seem really frustrated or whatnot. And there's different, emotion wheels and things that will help with kind of coming up with those specific words. But absolutely, when you hit that, when that's the issue and you name the name of the emotion, it really can make a big difference for sure. So
Yeah, thanks for that question, Carol. How wonderful to have that. What a treasure that you received in the mail. That's beautiful.
and
I'm going,
absolutely with it because there, aren't sometimes the verbal communication is a lot more difficult for people with dementia, then yes, the pictures can absolutely help because of that.
okay, I'm going to ask a self-serving question, and that is in the chat room. I'd love for you to share if you have a personal family conflict or if you have experience working with families in conflict. It's just my non-research research around how prevalent is this. So that would be really helpful for me. Thank you, guys. Oh, oh, and we have a question. And I apologize. I'm not sure if you were raising your hand for a question or raising your hand because yes, you have family conflict. So yeah, I started thinking about family conflict because of family conflict. So my family is really experts in having rifts and then holding grudges for decades. We excel at that. So it's always a challenge, I think. We don't have to manage it when we're miles away or even just, 5 minutes away and we don't see each other. But when we are stuck in that hospital room, it all just comes out. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing this. This is really helpful. Yeah, so Cynthia sharing, and Cynthia is one of our presenters on Friday. I've recently worked with a client with a family conflict. It has made the caregiving experience difficult and even the post-caregiving experience painful. Yes, absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
apologize, I'm not camera ready. You know me, I'm usually on camera, but I will say that working with her, one of her greatest distresses, she and her sister had a third sister who was really just steamrolling all of the decisions and making making my two clients basically feel completely uninvolved and unseen and helpless, and it was very challenging. Just to try to communicate, because I think they all were coming at it from a well-intentioned place, but they just could not see eye to eye, and it was very difficult to acknowledge and to help them through.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's terrible. And it was interesting to me that I started doing this presentation about difficult family dynamics probably about 20 years ago. And initially, when I was doing those workshops, discharge planners would have a few families that were in conflict. It is just, I suppose I shouldn't be shocked, but it just is shocking to me the prevalence of discharge planners trying to work through family conflict when a discharge is pending or referral to hospice services are waiting. I just can't imagine. So we see this family conflict distressing everything. It's distressing the individual discharge planner. It's distressing the systems. It's distressing the caree or patient, and then it's distressing the actual individuals within a family system. And I think it's important to note that sometimes the conflict is within siblings, and sometimes the conflict is between adult children and parents. And estrangement is something that is part of our society now in a way that it wasn't. One of the other things that I started researching 20 years ago was how prevalent are family estrangements, and I couldn't find statistics. It was only until 2019 when research really started to dig into how prevalent is it. And it's not just, I think of it as an experience that happens older, as we get older. And what was interesting is there was one research that found graduate and undergraduate students, so young adults, had a high percentage of family estrangement. Yeah, and B, I appreciate your thought in the chat room that families experience it as a crisis and may not have made a contingency plans, right? And so that's one of the things that we teach in our certified caregiving consultant program is that primary family caregiver, who oftentimes is the mediator. What strategies can we help them with so that they feel empowered to manage the agitator, the one that shows up and just creates even more of a crisis during a crisis? And so for in my family, we had a system to manage the agitator, our older sister. And basically my system was, I, I would call my brothers and my sister and I would say, well, I heard from her and here's what she said. What should I do? And sometimes it was ignore her and sometimes it was a simple statement, but I always wanted to make sure that everybody else was okay. And when my parents were alive and available to help with this, I would also say, Dad, I heard from her. Here's what she said. How do you want to respond? We were actually managing her as an agitator as my mom was dying, and it was just heartbreaking. And she never did come to visit my mom. She just created chaos, just created chaos. Okay. Laura, last thoughts as we close today?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really struck me from what you were saying is helping the people who are upset, helping them feel heard, helping them feel understood, and just getting that out is so important. And that is such a basic human need, whether we have dementia or not, it's really, really powerful for people to be understood and to feel heard. So um, that's all I have to say, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Laura. And one thing I would add is let's pay attention to our unmet needs. what's our own behavior when we have an unmet need, and what helps us with our own unmet needs. And I think we can look at ourselves as a case study that can help us in our work with others. And it includes persons with dementia, but it also includes other members of our family. What
Yes.
are their unmet needs? How do they behave when they have an unmet need, and what helps them meet the need? Okay, so I am going to post in the chat room the link to our survey. So for your one free CEU, which is available to those of you who have joined us live, you'll complete the survey. And again, it takes us about 12 business days to email the CEU certificate to you. We do ask you to use an email address that can receive an attachment. Sometimes people use their work address and then our email gets blocked because a spam blocker will block the attachment. So feel free to use an email address that you know will accept a PDF. Okay, this was really helpful. I'm going to think about my unmet needs in a new way. Laura, thank you for that. And thanks everybody for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it. And we hope we'll see you on Friday. We have 2 more ideas for you that we'll share and engage in a conversation. And you can register to join us through our Eventbrite page. And if Amy has the link, I'll ask her to put it into the chat room real quick. And we so appreciate the opportunity to connect and share with you. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, everybody. If you watched the recording, thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.